Dawn Day. I'm a nurse in the emergency room, and I have taken over as a sexual assault program coordinator. I've been doing that for several years in the emergency room, and that has involved into needing to not only care for victims of sexual assault, but get the education out there about human trafficking. So I'm also a Stand Against Trafficking Coalition member. That's a organization here in Springfield that has been founded. It's a bunch of members of the community that help try to educate and get the knowledge base out there and help try to facilitate care for victims of human trafficking here locally in Springfield. Okay, yeah, you're gonna.
It's getting kind of cantankerous. You got to be way over here to do it. So
Oh, okay,
I'll just do it from here because I'm going to sit here and take notes.
Okay.
So I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Before we even get started.
Yeah.
So you're a part of this coalition.
Mm-hmm.
So I noticed yesterday on my Facebook that there was something, and I clicked on it. Is it called Go 60?
Yeah, Go 61 is another one in town.
Okay, so we have different organizations.
Yes.
That are all working for the same goal of,
correct.
okay, but everybody's kind of doing their own thing, is that right?
The main one in town is the Stand Against Trafficking Coalition is a coalition members of all of these agencies in town that are working towards, and we get together monthly.
Okay.
And we share ideas and thoughts and strategies to try to help. So this is a group of all of those entities together.
So like the Go what? What's this?
Go 61.
And then it's Nightlight? Is
Nightlight.
part of it? Okay.
Nightlight sits on our coalition. Nightlight used to be Nightlight Branson. They are now Nightlight Missouri, and they have an office here in Springfield, Missouri. Because it kind of confused people. They thought that they were only in Branson, but they served the entire state of Missouri. They help kind of pull people out of human trafficking, pull people out of prostitution, and help them get on their feet, help them get housing and jobs, and help them get something different in their life other than what.
Timmery will be here this afternoon.
Yeah.
So then is anybody else?
She sits on the stand. Not that I'm aware of.
So just these two groups.
Those are the two coalitions.
Right.
Those are the two groups in town that I'm aware of that deal with human trafficking.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, Timmery, Stand Against Human Trafficking, Nightlight sits on our Stand Against Trafficking board, and she's a member.
All right.
Do you have police involved as well?
Mm-hmm. At the Stand Against Trafficking,
Right.
we have, police are involved. We have a member of Highway Patrol who was actually the individual that headed up the bust of the massage parlors last year.
Y'all remember that?
He sits on our board. And we have other community members. We try to really have a general outlook of what a coalition looks like. So we try to get members of social service agencies, hospitals. There's some prosecuting attorneys that sit on our board. There's police officers. So it's a big group of people. Anybody that touches the live or could touch the live of a human trafficking victim comes. And our biggest thing is maintaining the goal of education throughout the community right now. So what is human trafficking? It's the federal definition of human trafficking or sex trafficking is any commercial sexual act that's induced by force, fraud, or coercion. You have to prove force, fraud, and coercion to be able to have it categorized as sexual trafficking. That's very hard to do. There are not a laws that support being able to categorize things as such. So there's a lot of times where we as the lay public or we as nurses or individuals or even police officers know that it's a situation of human trafficking, but the laws have not caught up with supporting what we know human trafficking is. If you have a victim that's 18 years or younger, you do not have to prove force, fraud, or coercion. It is automatically sex trafficking because a minor cannot consent to sexual acts. So it's automatically sex trafficking if a minor is involved in this ring. You have to have act, means, and a purpose. If you have all three of those, the act, the means, and the purpose, it is considered trafficking. And that means is what happens through force, fraud, and coercion. Kind of some myths about human trafficking. It doesn't require traveling. A lot of things that you see on TV or in the movies is you take a girl and you move her from one country to another and you sell her. You don't have to have traveling for it to be sexual trafficking. It is just you could have a girl that has grown up here in Springfield locally, born and raised here, stays here, and can be pulled into the sex trafficking ring here in her own hometown. She does not have to move for it to be considered sex trafficking. Also, when I kind of interchange the topics, human trafficking is an umbrella that goes over two different types of trafficking. When you think of human trafficking, there's labor trafficking and there's sex trafficking underneath that. I'm going to focus mainly on sex trafficking because that's what we're focusing on in the coalition. But people are trafficked both using the same type of means, using force, fraud, and coercion to either put them into a laboring situation where they're not getting paid for their labor, or putting them into a sexual situation where they're not getting paid or being forced to do sexual acts. This is a graph that's kind of busy, but it just shows that the problem is fueled by supply and demand. You have a buyer that fuels the market with their money. You have the trafficker or pimp that exploits the victims and earns revenue for the buyers, and then you have the victim. And it's a huge continuing circle. The concept behind this is that there's supply and demand is what fuels the market, and that is why this is what keeps human trafficking or sexual trafficking going. If you have an illegal arms dealer that sells illegal weapons, they sell the weapons, they're out of the weapons, they have to get new weapons. If you have a person that sells cocaine, they have to produce the cocaine and they sell it and they have to produce more. If you have a person that gets illegally into sexual trafficking, they get a girl and they can keep that girl and they can sell her multiple times. So it's about supply and demand. They have the supply and they have the demand, and they don't have to go get more supplies. They can use that supply over and over again. So it's the number one illegal growing act in the world, sexual trafficking is. This is just some statistical data, and the 2017 data has not come out yet. It has not been finalized, but 8,542 survivors were in the year of 2016. And this is information that has gone to the National Trafficking Hotline number. Cases in just from 2007 to 2016, when we have started tracking the hotline, calls to the hotline, is almost 32,000. In 2016 alone was almost 8,000. So when I said that human trafficking is split up into two different divisions, 73% of that is sex trafficking. The other portion would be considered the labor trafficking.
Yeah, it's way over here.
Okay.
Way over.
So here's the
That's one thing I can do.
Here's the demographics behind it. Males and females can be trafficked. It is not just a female situation. Of course, the females is the much larger majority of the situation, but males can be trafficked as well. And then the red part is gender minority individuals. You also have adults and minors. Adults is the bigger range here, but minors is, they get in the average age of entry. They enter as minors. But there's a larger majority of adults because they stay around longer into adulthood. So that's why the adult population is larger. So you see here that the average age that a victim enters sex trafficking is age 12 to 17. They attack and go after a younger population of girls and boys because they're easier targets. Age is a big thing that traffickers will go after because they may be in unstable homes, they can't care for themselves, they're looking for someone to care for them. They can be easily manipulated. So 12 to 17 is the highest percentage of population entering into sex industry. So how are these victims being trafficked? A lot of times they get pulled in. The biggest population is intimate partner or marriage proposition. So what happens a lot of times with men pulling women into trafficking is they go after girls that haven't been loved in their families, don't feel love and support in their families, and looking for love and support, looking for a boyfriend. So you get this gentleman that comes in and swoops in and says, I can love you and I'll take care of you like no one else has ever taken care of you. I'll sweep you away. I will be your boyfriend. I will marry you. We will live happily ever after. You are mine. I will take care of you. And that's the majority of how they get pulled in. Familial is on there. There are situations in bad households where families will pimp their children out for money for drugs or money for any drugs is of course the biggest population of why they would sell their children out, but for any reason. So familial reasons, you have moms and dads that are putting their kids into prostitution because they have no other means to pay for things. Posing as a benefactor, false promises of fraud, or job offers. Job offers is, more like, I can get you a job where you can make more money. I heard an interview and a story of a girl who was a waitress, and like, you can make way more money than that if you just come with me. And they got her into stripping and then pulled her into trafficking. Yes, ma'am.
I was thinking of this just because a couple of years ago, so we have like a high population of homeless teenagers downtown. The magazine sales. Come to California with me and we'll sell magazines. You can make this much money. You just go door to door, and we lost a lot of kids that way.
Yeah, and that is a big population of the labor trafficking, and not saying that they're not coinciding and will cross over in one another. I'm from San Antonio. That was really big in San Antonio. Kids would attack me at the gas stations to try to sell magazines, and that's a huge thing for labor trafficking. They get them in, and
you would tell them that that's what they're doing. Take them to California and try to make them do things, and then when they ran away, they're stranded across the country from the people that they know and have support.
And a lot of people, and that's how I think, and it can start that way. It's all about force, fraud, or coercion, so they can coerce them into thinking that they're selling magazines, and some of them will stick to that story and stick to that plan, and it stays under the labor trafficking umbrella. But I'm going to make you think you're selling magazines, and then you're not going to be selling magazines. You're going to be doing this, is when it switches over to sexual trafficking.
So I have a real quick question about the familial. So babies are born into trafficking.
They can be. There's not a lot of statistical value behind that. A lot of people ask me what happens if a girl in trafficking gets pregnant. I've done a lot of research, and I've reached out to a lot of people who know a lot about it, and there's not a lot of statistical value behind it. Because I'm like, what happens if a girl in trafficking gets pregnant? Do they throw her off to the side, or do they keep her because they have another person they can use? And it really is up to the trafficker what they're looking for, what they want, and what they're willing to do. Some girls are kept in it, and they keep their children in the ring. Some, and that may be the more national, highly supported. National trafficking rings may keep, and because they know that they have the support system to be able to do it. You have a local guy here in Springfield that is doing trafficking on the side and has a small population and is not, I say big time national guy that doesn't have a lot of support in it. He may get rid of her, put her on the street, and then you have a pregnant girl on the street that was involved in human trafficking or sexual.
Okay, so the next question then: how young? What does this just? What have you seen or heard of in this area as the youngest of somebody being trafficked for sex?
I don't have a Springfield local number. The coalition, Timmery that's going to come talk to me, be able to give specifics because they reach out and they actually deal with people. Since they've opened, I have heard statisticals that they have saved or worked with or rescued 130 young women or men. They work with trafficking and prostitution. So she will probably be able to tell you a specific age of what her youngest victim is. What I have personally seen, the youngest that I have personally seen was 15 or known about, but there could be younger that she has worked with. So risk factors, age is definitely a risk factor. I spoke to that earlier. There's recent data shows that age 12 to 14 for girls and 11 to 13 for boys is the average age of entry into trafficking. So it's a little different for boys and girls. 100 to 300,000 children each year at risk of being trafficked. because they're running away from something. They're not running to anything. So that's the biggest thing that they go after is they go after vulnerable kids that are running away, that don't have good family structures, that are looking for something else in their life, and those traffickers are smart traffickers, and they use psychological components on them, and they promise to give them what these kids are looking for. So recent migration or relocation, so people that are new to town or people that are running away, so new to the area, are the number one risk factor for being pulled in. Substance abuse also plays a huge role in it. Runaway homeless youth is there. Sorry. So new to the area is the number one thing, and then runaway homeless or youth is on there. Mental health concerns or unstable housing. Those are all huge components to risk factors. How do they do the forced fraud and coercion? Emotional abuse is the biggest one. There's a myth. Human trafficking does not require you to be physically restrained. Movies or media may put out there, and a lot of the photos put out there, girls in handcuffs, girls in chains, girls tied down, girls secluded. It's more of a psychological seclusion that they put these girls in, psychological restraints. They don't actually tie them up. There are situations where they do, but it's a huge component of emotional abuse. Economical abuse, they take away their source of income. Sometimes they take away their driver's licenses, their passports, and can completely control them so they are unable to make money any other means. Isolation, including confinement. So that portion is in there. It's not a huge portion, but more isolation away from family and friends. They don't allow them to go see anybody else. They don't allow them to talk to anybody else. They isolate them away. Threats is a huge one. That's how they get most of the girls, is they just scare them and threaten them. And then physical abuse is on there, but it's the lowest one, because if they try all the top ones first. If the girl doesn't comply, then they'll start moving into physical abuse. It's like I talked about, it's psychological chains. It's not just physical chains. It's almost like domestic violence. A lot of people say, well, why don't the girls just leave? There's a psychological component to it, and the best way we can mirror that image is to domestic violence, because you have a lover boy concept where I love you, I'll take care of you, I'm so sorry, and then they do something bad, and they have another honeymoon stage where it gets better, and there's a honeymoon stage, and I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have done that. So girls in trafficking go through that same up and down flow. If it was horrifically bad every day, all the time, those girls are the ones that seek to get away and run away. But it's usually, oh no, he didn't mean to do that to me. He really loves me, and he's just having me do this because I need to help him out. Like he really loves me and really cares about me, and we're gonna get married one day. So escort services, illicit massage businesses, and residential are the top 3 trafficking types in 2016. But it's not necessarily underground. I want to say a lot of people think that it's like black market underground. You don't know about it. It's happening and it's not out in the world. It is out in the world, and that is, we already talked about the massage parlors that were shut down. So this is a very busy slide, but this is just to help support my concept of supply and demand. Like I said, it's the second largest criminal injury. I think that it's already popped up to the first largest now. This slide might be old because it's the fastest growing criminal act in the world. Human trafficking made $32 billion yearly. That is more than Google, Nike, and Starbucks combined. So worldwide, there's 21 to 30 million slaves in the world today. That's more than twice the number that existed in the transatlantic slave trade. And slaves are actually cheaper now. In the transatlantic slave trade, it costs $50,000 to $100,000 in the slave trade, and now they can buy girls for $90. So it's actually, hundreds of years later, we're actually paying less for girls.
Like, is that the price that, if that money had existed today, like, you know, the value of a dollar?
This statistic baffles me, the fact that, you know, that you could pay for a slave in the
Is that like,
transatlantic slave trade for $50,000 to $100,000, and now they're just trading girls around for $90.
I think she's saying like, was it really that much back then, or is that like the inflation?
That looks like,
comparison?
okay, that's what
that
I'm
looks like
assuming.
inflation adjusted.
But
Oh,
Dollars-
yes,
dollars
did I
higher.
actually give I'm sorry. Did I actually hand over $100,000? I know, I think that's comparative amount. I'm sorry, thank you. When you said inflation, I was like, okay, sorry, I connect to your question now. Yeah, I don't think that because back then, holy
Right,
heck,
that's what
$100,000 was
wait a
ridiculous.
second.
I think comparatively to where we're at now, yes, I think that's a comparative now. I don't think it was actually $100,000 back then. I think comparatively inflation-wise, I don't know how people had $100,000 then. So, and that's just my personal opinion, and I mean, your intuition as well, that is what that statistic means, because that's just how many people actually could hand over $100,000
Do we think the numbers are up, making it almost number one now? Because like Bob and I were just talking, now you have internet, you have the different mediums of social. And
Yes.
so these people are coming in like the back door and luring them easily.
Yeah, and
Versus now, before they had to see them face to face. Now
Yeah.
it's like.
yeah, and I think it's not, internet's a huge driving factor in it, and I also think it's the concept of, it's because there's not a whole lot of laws supporting it, since it's a new factor and a new concept. I think some of the statistical data is off, because I have seen controversy data where some sites will say that human trafficking is the #1 largest criminal industry. And I keep saying injury because I wrote injury, so I'm gonna have to go home and change my slide. But I mean, the U.S. Department of Health and Senior Services said second, but I've seen other little local things about human trafficking will quote that it's the first. I kept second on here because I thought U.S. Department of Health and Senior Services was a bigger entity than these little websites that I'm seeing. But I would not be surprised, because it is the fastest growing, that it'll surpass and go past illegal arms dealing. There are people being, there are people being transferred across borders annually. There's 5.5 million children that are being trafficked, and 1.2 million children are commercially sexually exploited each year worldwide. This is just a busy slide to kind of show that we do pull across borders. They come up from Mexico, they come down from Canada. There's statistical value about the amount of money it makes. In Springfield, we see a lot of Russian girls that are used in escort services. I have seen 2 Russian girls that have been pulled out of human trafficking, so girls are getting pulled over from Russia as well. So it's not just the low economical countries. They can pull girls from anywhere, promising them anything they want and pulling them into sex trafficking.
I had kind of heard a while back, like with the Russian or the Asian, there's also the lure of promising to bring them over and marry them to basically well-off people. But then once they get over here, then they're into that trafficking.
Yeah, and that's,
now they're here,
yeah,
like you said, away from family. They have no money to go back.
and they take their passports so they can't go back. So that's why, marriage is the #1 lure for human trafficking, because that's what happens a lot. That, or you can come over here and work and make a lot of money
to support your family back home.
and okay, this is the work you're going to do, and I'm not going to give you any money for it. This is just another statistical slide. I'm not going to go through and read each. Hey,
The screen's gonna touch.
are we going to shut down?
No, we're fine.
Okay.
You know, this, 1 in 3,
Yeah,
That's amazing.
within 48 hours.
Of running away.
Yeah. That just, that makes me sick to my stomach.
There are some that say 1 in 4. There are some that say 1 in 3, but still, the fact that within a 48-hour period of kids running away, because these traffickers are unfortunately very smart. I have the president of the founder of the coalition says that she has read books that traffickers have written, and she says they could have psych degrees. Like, these traffickers are smart, and so they know who to go after. They know how to go after them. So
Sit and look for it, like bus stops or terminals.
they go to any areas where kids are congregating. Somebody asked me once, and they're like, do they sit outside of schools? I was like, that's a little, not that I'm aware of. That's a little, put yourself out there. That's a little much, and that's a little too watched, a little too heavily guarded. They don't want to draw attention to them. So they go to arcades, parks, malls, and they'll go late at night. So I don't ever want to scare parents and make them think that their child can't go to the mall. If they're loitering at the mall after the mall has closed and you have a little group of friends, they'll be like, what? Ding, 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 why is this group of girls just hanging out here at 9 o'clock at night when everything's shut down and closed? They should be at home. And they'll go after that. So.
They entice them with drugs.
Oh yeah, and whatever they think that they will go after.
Yeah.
It could be a manicure and pedicure.
Yeah, it could be a new pair of shoes.
Yeah, I mean,
Modeling.
yeah, I mean, just something as simple as a manicure.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it was.
Okay, we ready for the next one? Or were you?
No, I am ready for the next one.
Okay.
I wonder, some of my wording got disappeared. I'll have to figure that out when I go back to
Okay.
work. So
I promise I'm not.
no, it's
I didn't do
okay.
that.
Some of my wording, I'm like, where there's blanks, there should be wording.
Oh,
But
okay.
Maybe it's the color choice I picked. I don't know. So this is just human trafficking in the United States. This is statistical data for the United States. $9.5 billion are generated yearly in the United States. That statistic disappeared. Sorry. One in.
That was in the
slide.
that was in the previous
Did I?
slide.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
because
back.
I remember seeing it.
hey.
right
There you go. I apologize. I put more data on, so I made 2 separate slides, and I didn't reprint these from last year because I was trying to save paper. That would be why. Okay, I know I updated it, and I was like, I have more data. I need to put more data on there, and I just never reprinted these. So I apologize. You can click me to the next one.
Okay.
There's nothing needed on this next one. I'm not missing anything. Sorry. So, human smuggling and human trafficking are 2 separate things. I was asked in an interview a year ago, there was an 18-wheeler that was brought over from Mexico, and they
Yeah.
smuggled a bunch of people in Texas,
Yeah.
and they asked me, they were found in San Antonio. I was actually in San Antonio visiting my family when that happened. I got back, and they asked me about it. And they're like, what about that sex trafficking ring that got busted? Smuggling and trafficking are 2 separate things, because it's what is the purpose for those people? Those people are being brought over to be sold for sex, and it's sex trafficking. But just because there's this act of smuggling, putting people on the back of most of these people want to come across. So smuggling and trafficking are 2 different things. Smuggling is a crime against the borders of that country. Trafficking is the crime against that person. So it's what is the purpose of them coming across? So anyone can be trafficked regardless of age, gender, economical status. It's all about how they forcefully lure these people in. Poverty alone is not the single cause of trafficking. A lot of people think they'll go after poverty-driven kids. That's not true. Poverty is a high statistical value that you have to think about with trafficking, but it's not the standalone cause of it.
Doesn't it all go back to the need of being wanted?
I think that
More
is
psychological need than it is
the more
financial
that I
need,
get
isn't
into it, the more situations I hear, because I've watched documentaries and I've read books, and there are 3 situations or people that I've gone to lectures for who now run coalitions in big cities who are victims of trafficking themselves, and they all grew up in what lovely, wonderful homes. They had good family, good insurance, they dressed well, they weren't going after money. They weren't really loved, and they were going after attention, or they lived in small towns, and the concept of, I'm going to go to a big city. I'm gonna make it big somewhere. My parents aren't supporting me here. I'm gonna show them, I'm gonna go make it big. And they find someone who promises them showing lights in a big city, and that's often how they get pulled away. This is just a map that shows, this is from the hotline. Missouri's the next slide.
It's right
I
here
know,
though.
it's
It's
like you can't even
Yeah.
see it.
Oh, yeah. And of course, I mean, right here on the border, of course, you're gonna have situations on the border where you're gonna have bigger hits.
The major cities,
And the major cities, but if you go to the next slide is the Missouri slide.
Okay.
No, it's not. What happened to it?
It's the next
It's
one.
the next one after this.
There we go.
Okay.
I'll go forward here so we can-
Sorry. So this is just 2015 to 2016. You can see that in just 1 year, the hits have gotten much larger. This is, of course, Kansas City, St. Louis. This is
Tulsa, maybe, Oklahoma City.
this is Joplin. This is Joplin. Joplin and Springfield is right here in the middle. Joplin has grown significantly. I think it's just entering a new state, crossing over a border.
I don't think that's Joplin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was like.
That might be Oklahoma or.
No,
This is Joplin, sorry. I knew Joplin was red. Oh, I made it bigger and I can
Yeah.
see.
Mhm.
I knew Joplin was red. That's Joplin right there. And here's Springfield. I knew Joplin grew in redness because I don't know how to get back because I touched the screen. I apologize. Yes, Joplin, this is Joplin here. This is Joplin here. So Joplin got redder in just the year. Springfield got redder in just the year. So I knew, because I wanted to focus specifically on Missouri. Joplin and Springfield did see increases in the amount. Every city did, but there was a bigger increase in Joplin just because of it coming across the border. And I think it's the first that there's big truck stops there. Anything across the I-44 corridor is going to be hit.
right. Somebody just chatted. They're just on with phone saying, look at the I-44 connection.
Uh-huh. And that's the biggest thing is the I-44 corridor is going to be lit up a lot
Yeah.
because of where it's
Yeah,
at.
it's just like a straight line. Now you want me to go back to this.
Yeah.
There we go.
So trafficking and prostitution are two separate things. They can be interchangeable. Prostitution is a girl who chooses to get into the sexual encounters. Trafficking is that they don't have that choice. A lot of times girls do get into prostitution and it turns into trafficking. They don't want to do it anymore, but they're already in it. And that's a situation where the laws haven't quite caught up with us yet because there was a lot of victim blaming in this situation. A lot of girls were being arrested for prostitution when really they should have been arresting the pimps for trafficking situations. So that is where the laws are having to be more defined on what this looks like because these two things are getting mixed up in the media and in social cultures and in law enforcement. So they're not necessarily it's the intent behind it. But traffickers and pimps can go back and forth because traffickers and pimps kind of do the same thing. So we're seeing some of the same things over again, but there's pimp controlled prostitution, familial, survival sex, and there's rising gang control are reasons why this is increasing. And like I said before, any minor is a victim of trafficking, regardless of their willingness. And there's the domestic minor sex trafficking. There's actual definition about what a minor in sex trafficking looks like.
So you were saying that the trafficking and the prostitution are kind of melding because in my mind, they could still be a prostitute, but because they're forced into the prostitution,
Yeah,
even though it may look on the outside like it's their own free will, they go stand on the street corner.
yes. And there's no more standing on the street corner. That's not.
I know that's the old.
Yeah, that's the old, and that's how a lot of people think that any girl that is selling herself for sex is a prostitution and she wants it. I was in a meeting and I even had a police officer sit next to me, and when they were talking about Backpage.com closing down, he's like, oh, but all the girls on there wanted to be on there, so I don't understand that. I'm like, oh, no,
Yeah,
no,
because
not every girl wants to.
right, as a prostitute, you have, it's not your money, even though you're working it, you've got, like you said, a pimp and a trafficker
Yeah,
who you've got to give that to, and if you don't, then you're probably getting beat up or.
yeah. But and that's, a lot of times people think that is where the grayness is
It kind of
existent,
blurs
very
into-
big, because it's, what is this girl's intent? And oftentimes a girl will enter prostitution to make ends meet willingly, and the moment that she is there's force, fraud, or coercion behind it, and she doesn't want that anymore, but she's being controlled, the federal law states that is now sexual trafficking. But how do you have to prove that force, fraud, and coercion behind it? And that's where it's difficult to prove that. And that's why a lot of girls, they just go after them as prostitutes, because it's easier to prove that there was an exchange of money for a sexual act. It's the intent and the want and the mindset behind it that's hard to prove with law. But we're thinking that there's a lot more sex trafficking situations going on because of the control behind it.
Right.
That,
Especially if you're getting into rising gang control, these gangs are prostituting out the women
Oh.
so they can buy more drugs.
yes, or in exchange for drugs.
Or guns or whatever.
And that's the biggest thing. There's been stories of girls who've been with this guy, and he promises to love her and take care of her, and then all of a sudden she arrives home one day and there's 4 other guys in the room, and he says, I owe them money for drugs and you're going to sleep with them, and that's how we're going to pay him. And that is sex trafficking, because he is forcing her to do that for him. But if someone off the street walks in, they might be like, oh, there's a girl exchanging money for sex, she's prostituting. But why is she doing it? She was forced to do it.
Right. Did everybody catch the website it's Backpage, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that has been shut down. Yeah. I did not have a clue that there was such evil things
Yeah.
until I
How
went
much,
to an FBI thing in Springfield like last year. It's, the dark web and all that kind of stuff.
Sometimes it's not even that marketing.
No, I know.
Other things like Craigslist,
Yeah.
you see a lot of that on there as well.
That's been
That
taken
is-
off, hasn't it? Didn't they pass something where Craigslist had to remove a lot of stuff like that?
Probably,
Yeah,
Tim Marie can
yeah.
probably speak to much more of that, because Tim Marie uses, they use Backpage.com, because they just spoke in a meeting we had yesterday, where they're very thankful that site got taken down, because that was a way that girls were
Right.
being exploited. But that is also a way that they were
They
in
were-
contact and reaching out to help girls.
Okay.
So now they're like, they have to figure out what means these girls are going to go to next, so that they can continue to do their job. So Tim Marie will be able to speak much more significantly to
Got my little list.
Backpage.com.
All right. Are we ready to go to the next one now?
Yep.
Okay. Here we go. Okay.
Okay, so human trafficking in the medical field. 87% of human trafficking victims see a healthcare provider in their time of trafficking. So I focus a lot on doing education purposes for medical staff. A lot of, like I said, I got involved in human trafficking because I'm a sexual assault coordinator. But my biggest thing is I need to educate all staff, because girls are not going to come into the emergency room and say that they've been sexually assaulted. So sexual assault nurses know about this, but they're not seeing it. It's all the other nurses that are going to be seeing this situation. And when we say healthcare providers, that can be urgent care, ER, or primary care providers. Because there is a population of girls where we talked about that they're born and raised and bred here in Springfield. Boys or girls can live normal lives at home, go to school, live under the roofs of their parents, have insurance, have a primary care provider, and on weekends they go over to their friend's house. And I'm going to go to my friend's house, I'll see you Monday. And they go to their boyfriend's house and they're being exploited over the weekend. I've read a lot of articles and stories about that happening. So I don't want it to be that it's this underground thing that's only in emergency rooms. It can also happen in primary care offices. So we're trying to put education out to everybody. They're going to arrive with average health concerns. So like I said, they're not going to come in saying they've been sexually assaulted. They, key things are reoccurrent urinary tract infections, vaginal infections, 100% an STD in a minor, 100% is an illegal situation. So you got to figure out what that is.
What was that?
Sexually transmitted diseases in minors
Oh, okay.
is automatically a huge red flag that the authorities have to be involved in. Bumps, bruises, broken arms, belly pain, things like that. They're never alone, but they could be with a male or a female. A lot of times the female has grown up in the sex trafficking circuit and has proved herself worthy to the male. So they're now the mom of the group because they try to create like this family bonding unit. Either this is I'm your mommy and daddy, we're going to take care of you like your mommy and daddy didn't. Or if the girl's old enough to want a boyfriend, it's like an aunt type figure, but it's a woman that's in charge of these girls. So it doesn't always have to be a situation of a girl with a man. It can be, it's just the fact that they're never alone. So it could be a woman that's out there controlling with them. They make limited eye contact. Others will speak for them. They're often timid, depressed, shy, that don't like social contact, are afraid to speak for themselves. If they're asked a question, they look to the other person to answer the question for them. In situations where they have been brought in from other areas, that they won't know much about this area. If you ask them what Silver Dollar City is, they won't know, because these victims, you can't just say, are you being sex trafficked? Is that what's happening? You have to kind of talk to them and try to get these red flag cues out and see what you can figure out. So they're not going to know a lot about Springfield. They're tattooed or branded. Some photos show barcodes on the forehead. They're not ever on the forehead, back and neck, back of back, wrists. So I say serial number, barcodes, like gang symbols, names of guys that are homemade tattoos. They are poor quality. So anything that shows ownership. If you have a girl with if you see a barcode tattoo on a girl, though, that is sex trafficking by and by. So, but other forms, they'll do other forms of branding and tattooing. Yes, ma'am.
So is the barcode thing like super well known? Because like I've known people who just want to get barcode tattoos of like things they like. Like, this is a barcode for a candy bar. I have it tattooed on me. They don't have it, but they're like, I want to. And so I'm like, so now I'm gonna be like, no, don't do that. Because they're just gonna think you're in sex trafficking.
Right.
Yeah, that the only time I've seen a barcode tattoo was of a girl. She was from Russia. She was pulled out of a Russian orphanage. She was here in the United States, and she's here in Springfield. She came in the emergency room, and she's no longer in the sex trafficking ring, but she had a barcode tattoo.
Okay.
So that's very indicative of sex trafficking. If a teenager wants to go out and get a barcode tattoo, okay, but that's silly, don't do that.
Yeah, and so I was just wondering, like, I don't think I've ever heard that, so now I want to make sure and tell people not to do that.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. It's getting it out in the community, getting the knowledge base out. It starts in groups like this. It starts in hospitals. It starts in organizations, but it's just about educating the population. A lot of people are like, "Are you going to middle schools and telling the kids in middle school about this?" I'm like, oh, "No, because we haven't been invited." Like, well, you should be knocking on the door. I go,
Yeah, that's a scary.
What about ambulance services,
That's a
first
little-
responders? Do you educate them?
Specific education has not gone out to them that I know of. This is a new concept, new thing. The education that is happening is based off of the people in the coalition that want to do the education and go out and do speaking arrangements and stuff. I did a Facebook page for the Mercy Hospital where I work at because they interviewed me for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and I said, hey, if you ever want to do a story, you should do a story on human trafficking. That's a big thing. You guys should get on that. And they go, oh, okay. So we got to get the word out there, and we need to get it spread. But I've been speaking on this for about a year now. So it's a new concept, it's a new idea to get that out there. So yeah, we would love to have everybody know about it, but we just haven't made it
The
through.
reason why I say this is sometimes like a, fire service and ambulance service may
Mhm.
respond to a scene and somebody's got some scrapes, bumps, or bruises,
Yeah,
and they just treat them on scene and leave, and they don't take them to the ER
Yeah.
for further, evaluation. So,
agreed. And I hope, I specifically personally don't know of any education that has gone out to first responders, but I anticipate that it'll happen really soon. There was education that went out to highway patrol and detectives and specific entities of the police. On May 7th, there's going to be a citywide law enforcement education for human trafficking. It's going to touch as many police officers that can attend that. It's open up to anybody, but I say anybody, any law enforcement, so Springfield PD, Greene County. The detectives that I work with Greene County, Springfield PD, and Highway Patrol are very well aware of this. We need to get it out to the street cops that aren't detectives, that haven't had the specialized training. The specialized training is coming. There's also, the coalition has also gone out to hotels and has done special education in hotels on what sex trafficking looks like, and to be aware of it. It's difficult to get into the hotels that I personally would want them in. They're doing like the most recent one they did was looking to hotels. But just getting out there and getting that information out. We haven't done anything locally, but nationally, a lot of education has gone out to airlines. Stewardesses are getting education on human trafficking. There's been a lot of publicity around Super Bowl. This past Super Bowl, there was a guy arrested for human trafficking. In a few years ago, the Super Bowl that was in Houston, Texas, a stewardess on American Airlines saved a girl off the plane that was in the media recently, because you have a whole bunch of men all in one place that all bring a bunch of money, that all have a lot of money and all want to party, and no one's checking their ticket stubs and seeing what they're spending and what they're doing. I mean, they're there to party. They're taking cash. So Super Bowls are we're finding out Super Bowls are a huge hotspot, and people will bring girls in on planes. So a lot of education is going to stewardesses.
Okay, so I have a question. So somebody walks into one of the clinics and a tattoo is noticed. So as a mandated reporter, should a call be made?
We cannot. When you talk about mandated reporter, you need to know how old she is. There is no mandated reporting if she's 21 years old and comes in with a tattoo. That's a big red flag that needs to prompt more questioning and more probing of her in a very gentle way. If I had a girl that came in, because if I had a girl that came in bebopping in on her by herself with the tattoo, I'd be like, that was a really horrible choice in tattoos. But if she comes in and she's with someone, she's already not making eye contact, and then she has that tattoo, my number one thing is I have to get that girl alone. I have to figure out how to get her alone. But when I'm not alone with her, I need to let her know she can trust me. I need to have a conversation with her and chat with her and visit with her and let her know that I'm a nice person. She could trust me. And then she's going to get an x-ray, or she's going to get a urine sample. She's going to get something that I'm sorry, you can't come in this room with us. We'll be right out. And I have a very limited time. It's just like domestic violence situations. And yeah, I'm not going to ask her, are you being sexually trafficked? I'm going to say, are you doing okay? Do you need help? I can help you. Because are you okay? Do you need help? I can help you is going to be the number one thing in that short amount of time that you have. But we have just instituted official protocols into our emergency room on what do you do with sex trafficking. It's very difficult, which I'll get to numbers at the end of the slide, but if we have a minor that we believe is being sex trafficked, we can call local law enforcement and do a hotline. If I have a 18 to 25-year-old female, unless she says, yeah, I need help me, there's no law enforcement agency in which I can call and say, come help this girl. She has to speak up for herself currently. That's how the law states.
I don't know if you can do this for people who aren't minors, but like, because at the clinic, you're usually trying to verify their information when they get there, and maybe they lie and they don't give a real address or whatever, which, because of their situation, I don't give a real address either.
Yeah.
to call the police and do a wellness check that, hey, like I'm concerned about illegal things happening in this household, can you go check? I know they've done that for children for me before, and they do that for seniors and for disabled people, but I don't know if they would do that if you say, I'm just concerned that there are illegal things happening.
There's a national hotline that we can call if we suspect something, and that will get routed back to police. But I can't call 911 and say, hey,
I'm concerned.
I think something might be happening, because how do I know what that girl's address really is? The very first education I ever did in the hospital was to registration staff, because they're the ones that are going to be going in and asking their relationship with the person with them. Who are you to this person? Do you have a driver's license? Do you know her social security number? Do you have, what's her address? What's her phone number? Do you have an insurance card? So education went out to registration staff immediately. And I've had registration see red flags and have called me and say, can you go and talk to these people? I don't know. And I'll go in and kind of ask and screen. There was one where there was a girl who she didn't speak any English. She was in for belly pain, and she was with an older guy that answered all the questions for her. And everyone was like, what is this? And I'm like, okay, well, let's have the nurse was like, we need to call the cops. I was like, whoa, okay. We have to have probable cause to call the police right now. Let's send registration in. And it ended up where this was her father. He provided insurance. It was a cultural issue where she was scared and didn't want to speak because there was a language barrier and there was a cultural situation going on there where that's why he was speaking for her, because of cultural reasons. But I'm glad that it was on everyone's mindset and that they were concerned and it was a red flag. But it's been really hard going forward with creating an official protocol. There's a girl that's been working on it significantly for over a year. She works with all local law enforcement. Phone calls are made nationally to get this protocol because we want to make sure we have the right information on board. And we're really struggling with that population of girls that do not fit into any hotlining situations as far as child division or adult and senior services. Adult and senior services actually don't want to touch it because we called them and said, what do we do if we have a disabled person that is being trafficked? We need to call you, and like, we don't do trafficking here in this. No, we know. And we're like, well, someone's got to do this. So that's it's just catching up with the reality of it.
Because they think that trafficking is going across borders and all of that stuff. Is that why they're not wanting to touch it? They feel like it's out of their jurisdiction?
I feel like they just don't have any laws or rules to support what that is. Because when you call them and say, how do you handle a situation? If I call you and I say I have a 22-year-old delayed individual who's being trafficked,
I'm just gonna say
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, the human there's not a lot of human trafficking laws on the books. Nothing is official yet, but I have heard that this bust for the massage parlors, they're trying to charge them with the trafficking charges, but it's very hard to prove trafficking charges of forced fraud or coercion if you don't have the buy-in from the victims saying, yes, he made me do that. And a lot of these girls in the massage parlor aren't talking to law enforcement agencies. So they're still working on it. And like I said, I'm not a cop. I don't have official information, but I've heard in meetings and stuff that they may have to just charge these individuals with illegal prostitution and not trafficking. Because for trafficking, you have to have those and all of the law enforcement agencies know it was sex trafficking, know that they were making the girls do this, but they can't prove it. So the laws haven't caught up yet. But I think that there's enough publicity and enough stuff out there where it's going to catch up eventually.
I think part of the problem is that nobody wants to think it's going on, so why address it?
I think you have to be under the disabled. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So this is just pictures of people that I pulled off that have been arrested for trafficking situations. So it's not any one gender, it's not any one race, it's not any one age, it's anybody of any economical status, girls, boys, white, black, Asian, it doesn't matter. So all these people have been arrested and booked on trafficking charges. This is a judge that even got arrested for human trafficking charges. So it does not matter who you are, what you do. Anybody could be a trafficker. So he actually was arrested and booked on human trafficking charges, and he's a judge.
So what about like, are you training people like at Rare Breed and other places to watch for?
I think that they know about it. I have not done any specific training at Rare Breed, but they are involved in a lot of coalitions around town, so they know the risk factor behind it. And I think that as an organization dealing with that population of children, that I think that they're highly aware of the potential risk for that. But a lot of their kids may be in the situation where, you know, that, a lot of people are like, what training are you doing for children? I said, well, when I have a middle school that allows me to enter the doors, I will, but I can't just go knocking down doors and want to teach kids about what this is.
I know Go 61 has done stuff with like the juvenile office and like some church trainings, but it's not so much like this. It's like how to keep yourself safe and how to,
Yeah. Go 61 was the very first, the founder of Go 61, it was the very first time I was ever exposed to what human trafficking was, or sex trafficking was. And she says that she, you know, I knew that they worked a lot with churches and faith-based, and she said that she would go out and sit in front of hotels and try to help girls that they would see, and they would go and they sit at the Stratford truck stop, and they would watch girls go back and forth. They have a connection with the federal agents where if they see certain clues that kind of pop up, like lights on trucks with girls going from truck to truck to truck, they will call the local law enforcement and see if they'll come in and do that. But I know, they were the very first ones in town that I knew of that came to speak to us about what human trafficking was. So there are a lot of agencies. I am merely a person. I have no authority to care for a victim of human trafficking. I'm merely a educational piece to the community. But there are so many, and I'm going to Kansas City at the end of the month to do a speech, and I'm a keynote speaker because I'm an expert. I go, no. I would call Timmery, who you guys are going to meet later, an expert. This is her job. This is what she does. This is her career. She runs an organization where this is what she does. I am a nurse that specializes in situations where victims of crimes. So I do educational pieces to help the community, but I don't touch the lives of human trafficking victims like Timmery and Go 61 do. So there are a lot of agencies out there, and I am part of that coalition, but part of that coalition has all those other members on them.
So do they have a place where they can house them if they get them out of the?
No. There is housing that is trying to be built. Someone else that's on the coalition is working to do housing, but that's the biggest problem. That's the biggest problem nationwide. I've been to conferences where people like in Kansas City say, yeah, we do all this work, but then we got nowhere to put these girls. There's talk about can Harmony House hold 2 beds at all times in case we save a victim of human trafficking so they have somewhere to go. But when the massage parlors hit, I heard that the agencies in town, Nightlight and Go 61, were kind of scrambling to just get food, get shelter, get something for these girls. But it was all last minute. What do? We got to do something now. There's not a structure built in town to house these girls, and that's the biggest thing. And that's the biggest question that pops up with authorities that care for this population of people is, okay, well, we find them. What do we do with them? Right. And maybe Timmery in the next hour can tell you what she does with them, because that's what they do. But I don't know of any safe house for victims right now. But I want to tell you what the difference between these numbers are real quick. The National Human Trafficking Hotline is a national hotline. That's a tip service. That is where I got a lot of my statistical value. That's where I get the numbers of how many calls get in. That's who produces the map of the calls that get hit. They're a national hotline, and they just take it. They're like HIPAA protective. They don't want to know names, addresses, date of birth. They don't want any of that. They're a tip line. They want to know that you suspect that there's a 17-year-old male in Springfield, Missouri that's being humanly trafficked, and you can say, what kind of resources can I offer them? And they'll pour any local resources at you over the phone, and you will have that. But really, they're about national funding to show that the numbers are increasing, that the numbers are growing, and where they're growing. So they're just a statistical data component. The Missouri Attorney General, that number got built. They changed it to a 1-800 number. When it first got built, it was a local, like daytime phone number, and they realized that was real bad. So they changed it to a 1-800 number so it could be used 24 hours a day. This came out after the massage parlor bust here in Springfield because the Attorney General was very interested in stopping sexual trafficking in the state of Missouri. This, through my investigation with Highway Patrol and local law enforcement, where I've sat down at the table and said, who do we call if I have a victim of human trafficking? What do I do? This will bounce back to police. So this line will take, if you have patient identification information, you can say, there's this girl, this is what I know, this is how old she said she was, this is the address they gave me, I don't know if it's true or not, but this is what I have. So Missouri Attorney General will take patient information or victim information, and they will link that back to law enforcement that needs to be involved in that situation so they can investigate it. And then any time that you know for sure, if you have a girl that has asked for help or you have a confirmation that it is sexual trafficking, you can call 911. But if you have a suspicion, you have to go the other routes. I'm hoping that changes, but currently as of today, that is where our protocol stands in the emergency room, and that is kind of where the law stands right now.
To go back for a minute, sorry, I had to take a personal phone call. So you were talking about, there was a hotline number that you could call a minute ago, and that it would work back to you. I mean, like if you suspected somebody, did I understand the order of that right?
The Missouri,
not necessarily this. It was 2 or 3 slides back, and you were talking about I said something, and you said, well, you could call a hotline number.
that's what these are. That's what these are.
So then my question is, if I'm thinking that this could be a possibility, and I call a 1-800 number, then how quick does it get back to the local officials? Does that make sense?
The Missouri Attorney General is the only one I know that links back.
Okay.
And I'm told it's a situation of like 48 hours because it's right. It's a Monday through Friday type situation.
Okay.
I've even had highway patrol officers say, when we get in Monday morning, we'll get it. There used to be for the state of Missouri, a drug hotline where you suspected meth or drug deals going on. You called this hotline number and it got to the local law enforcement. I'm told that this number is linked into that same computerized system, generating reports. They're just reporting out sexual trafficking. So
but nobody gets sent out very quickly. So the follow-up time, the lag time, and catching up with people, it probably isn't very successful.
Yeah, it's a situation where they now have a tip that they can go off of, and they can follow that tip and investigate and kind of follow and see where it goes. That is why if a girl is in immediate danger, that 911 is the only way that you're going to get immediate access. But
That's only if they're under 18.
No.
Or they're in immediate danger.
They're in immediate danger.
If they say, yes, I need help me. If you suspect that they are in immediate harm, you can call 911 and say, if this girl leaves this clinic, something bad is going to happen to her. I'm worried for her. There's a crime that you are stating is being committed. Or if she says, yes, he's doing bad things to me, help me, then you can call 911. If you just like, this feels really funky, just like with pediatric abuse cases, if you have injury to a child and I'm calling 911, the authorities are getting here right now, this is immediate, this child has injuries. If you're looking at a situation, you're like, something's not right with this child, then you make a hotline report. But you can't, if I can't, because there has to be an investigation. So same thing with trafficking. If you think that something's going on, we can't call 911 and have the cops come and show up right away. There has to be a tip called into the hotline and they have to investigate it. And that's currently where we're at today. Next year, when I come to this class, if I get invited back, I may have a new slide to this. I hope that I do. I hope that by that time things catch up. But as of right now, we've sat down and called the Attorney General. We've sat down with the gentleman that was in charge of the bust for local law enforcement for the massage parlors, and we're like, can we call you? And he's like, no, you can't call you. This is who you call. So.
And that's just because there's no laws per se on the book to
support it.
But they also like collate all that information that you give. So like if that person keeps showing up, then.
Yeah, it's just like child protective services. The more reports you make, they kind of were like, oh, yeah, they will put hits together. And a lot of times we're not going to have a lot of information. You're not, because they hide the girl's identity. They're not going to be truthful with us. So a lot of times it is just very random tips that we have that we can throw at them in hopes that the law enforcement can put the dots together and figure something out, because a lot of times I'm not going to have a name, date of birth, and an address on a girl. Like, if you call 911 dispatch, they're like, can you give me the name, the date of birth of the victim? Well, I don't know it. But could you go check out this house that they said that they live at? And a lot of times that house is not going to be the real house. So a lot of times it is just tip lines right now. So like I said, I hope, like I said before, I'm just giving out the data. There are many people behind the scenes that are working on this. So hopefully my data will change and my information will change and my phone numbers will change and say, oh yes, call this number locally. They'll take care of it, but I don't have a local number to take care of it.
So
right now.
going back to the bust, you were talking about all the girls with the massage parlor. How many total were involved in that?
I don't know. Timmery, write that down for her.
Okay. Well, I mean, because the Harmony House and 2 beds wouldn't hold a light. I mean,
no,
you know what I mean. So
that's just talking. I sit on multiple coalitions in town. I sit on Stand Against Human Trafficking. I have the SART. I'm in charge of the SART committee that we meet locally for sexual assault victims. I'm also sitting on the planning committee for the Family Justice Center that's coming to Springfield, and that has been like conversation within those groups of people of what do we do about housing, and people have thrown out like, well, maybe the Harmony House can always save beds at some point. That would not have helped.
Oh, well, no, that's what I'm getting at.
Not at all. Like this was,
yeah.
I don't want to say hundreds, but because I know it's several parlors. So it's a huge group. So no,
Yeah.
the 2-bed situation would not have helped in this. She will be able to give you data because her organization went out and helped these girls.
Got my whole list.
So if she doesn't know the answers, blame it on me. But her organization went out and actually helped these girls, so she'd be able to give you statistical data on it.
So does any of my remote people have questions? I don't know what y'all do about numbers, but when I have 1-800 numbers, I write them down and I enter them in my phone. And then when I'm scrolling through trying to find something, I'm like, where'd that come from? And then I think, oh yeah, because they're good numbers. They're good numbers to have. So so probably the best one for us to have would be the Attorney General number.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say. That's where you're going to get stuff done.
Okay.
I was going to make the comment that if you're just a citizen and you see what you suspect is a house that, might be a brothel or has some suspicious activity, you can still file a non-emergency report
Oh, yes.
with the police department. And of course, the more data that you have or the more information that you have that's truthful and that you put into because the person that's going to be taking the report on the other end of the line is going to write all this down. And I know with the Springfield Police Department, because I used to work there, a detective's going to look at it.
Yes.
Or at least it'll be one more tip for that location where, wherever this place is, they're going to look at it because they're going to get, if you see it, somebody else is going to see it too.
Yeah.
And they'll have multiple reports
And
Yeah.
on the same
pictures,
location.
cell phone pictures.
Yeah, if you have
time and
addresses
date.
or if you have addresses or locations,
Right.
you can call that in because for the 911 you have to essentially have
Yeah,
you have to have data. You have
Right.
to have something to go off of, a color of a car, name of a person,
yeah.
some identifying
Well,
factor, something.
that's-
So yeah,
That's all the information,
address.
that's all the information. If you see all that, cars, license plates, all that information that can identify what's going on there.
Yeah,
Descriptions of people, that can go all into one report. And ultimately, a detective will look at that and see if there's enough information for
Yeah.
him to act.
The number one caller to the tip line, year after year, is a community member. That's above victims themselves, that's above local
Yeah.
law enforcement. The number one caller to the tip line is a community member. It goes out and sees it, calls it in. We, unfortunately, in the medical field, in the emergency room, our
Yeah.
protocols had to be different because we have to work under HIPAA compliance laws. And if I don't have proof or information, like I don't have an address, I don't know what the car looks like, I don't know if the name I have is real.
Yeah, you're not in a situation to
So that's,
see all that.
but yeah, if you are out in the community and you see suspicious behavior, call it into local law enforcement, yes, because they will take tips. But I can't call suspicious behavior of a patient into the cops. I would be calling them all the time if I wanted to call them about odd behavior in the emergency room.
I'm just saying,
So-
community health workers are going to be out in the
Oh.
community and see things.
And that is why community
So-
community workers are the number one people that make calls into the tip line, number one. Above medical professionals, above anybody else, because they're out there seeing it. And they can have, and because of that, because they're out there seeing it, they have more information because they can provide an address, they can provide a date and a place and a situation. When you have it isolated in a clinic or an office, you have to go based off of what that girl will tell you. And a lot of times the girls are taught not to trust us, do not tell them anything, don't trust them, they're not gonna help you, they're gonna take you away from me. So we have to gain that trust of those girls, and a lot of times the girls won't open up. So,
Very good.
any other questions?
Remote, any comments or questions? Do you mind if I share this?
How about it?
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, but it's yours, so I don't want to make it shareware unless I
Yeah.
have your permission. Okay,
I
well,
apologize
thanks.
for the typos.
Okay.
As I'm reading them,
You
I'm
know
like,
what?
oh,
You
I'm
can
gonna
look
go-
and
I'm gonna
look
go
and
back
look
and
and look.
I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna fix that right now. Yeah, the words are spelled right, they're just the wrong words up there right now.
Well, you've got an excuse. It's, the progesterone or anything going on.
I will use pregnancy brain as much
There
as
you go,
possibly
there
can.
you So, okay, well, if there are no other questions, then thanks for coming in. Go home,
Yes,
put your
of
feet up.
course.
Yeah,
I'm going to work, but thank you. I'll put my feet up at work.
You working regular kind of day shift hours?
I am now.
Good.
Now, yeah. Now that I'm already dilating and I'm like, nope, we're not time for that. So now I'm strictly office, which makes me feel a lot better because I had so much work to get done for the position that I'm in before I had the baby. So now I can do only that. So I'm going to go to the
Thank you.
office. Thank you
Appreciate it.
guys.
Thank
You have
you.
a great day.
You too.
Um,
Birthday. Thank you.
Let's take about a